Program Coordinator at the Wilkes University Small Business Development Center. I'm so happy that you could join us this afternoon. Before we begin, I would like to thank Ryan Cloutier for partnering with us and sharing his expertise today. Just a quick note to please put yourselves on mute so that we can avoid having any background noise. And also, as we go along, you can type any questions that you might have into the chat box. And there will also be time at the end of the presentation to ask any questions. And now I'll go ahead and turn the program over to Ryan. Thank you.
Thank you, Jolene. Well, welcome everyone. I'm so glad you're here today. Let's just make sure we've got technical stuff here. So are you guys able to see my screen? I think we can. Excellent. And just a quick housekeeping, as Jolene had mentioned, if you do have questions, go ahead and pop them in the chat and we will talk at the end about Q&A. So today what we're going to talk about is something that I commonly hear from small businesses, medium businesses, really everybody. And it's, how do I secure my files? You know, what are some of the things that I can do to meet the requirement of keeping my files secure? And this is important for a variety of reasons and a variety of compliance frameworks. Today, we're going to focus a little bit on the CMMC framework. That is the framework that the Department of Defense has kind of said is the minimum standard for any business doing business with the DoD. But before we get into all the details, just a couple quick intro slides. Security Studio is the organization I am the president of, and we are a values-based, mission-focused, vision-driven organization. And so what that means is basically we do things a little bit different. One of the core tenets of our mission is to help serve, is to actually help folks like yourself get better at this, and not by saying, hey, give me money and then I'll give you all the answers, but by doing events like this and actually providing valuable, actionable knowledge. And that is part of our vision for a better and more secure world. For myself, I probably look a lot similar to the picture here. I've been doing this for well over 15 years now. I'm a virtual chief information security officer to a variety of businesses, K-12 school districts, and some higher ed institutions. I am a certified information systems security professional, or CISSP. That just simply means I possess the highest accreditation that one can get in the industry of cybersecurity. Co-host a few podcasts and occasionally post stuff to Twitter. So you can find me there at CloutierSec. So let's just start off with the basics. What is a file? So a file is any media being thumb drives, hard drives, for those of you that are old enough, floppy disks, cloud storage locations, Word files, PDFs, zip files, et cetera, et cetera. A file can also be paper, microfiche. So essentially it is any form of media that contains information. So when we're talking about files and we're talking about file management, we want to remember there's a physical aspect as well as a digital aspect. Digital files are primarily what we're going to focus on today. And a digital file, you know, can be easily duplicated or modified. This is important to understand. So just like when we make a backup of a file, we make a copy of it and move it somewhere else to back it up. One of the ways that our files can be made insecure is by not keeping an eye on who can do that copy or who can do that modifying. Digital files tend to live in multiple locations. So as we think about how we're going to secure these files, one of the very first steps is to figure out all the places that that file might be. For example, myself, I have files that are on my local hard drive. I have files that are in my OneDrive. I have files that are in my Google Drive. I have files that are in my Amazon cloud. I have files all over the place. And in order to properly secure those files, I have to make sure that every one of those places that that file lives is secured. And the reason this is important to us is that files are what the cyber criminals are locking up and holding for ransom. So when they're ransoming a company, what they're really doing is they're locking up your files and making it so that you can't use them. And in most businesses today, that would cause the business to cease to be able to function. Just a quick statistic, 60% of small business will go out of business within 6 months following a cyber attack. And the number one cause of that is that their files were held for ransom and they weren't able to get those files. And so they weren't able to conduct business for a few weeks. And then after they recovered, they have this huge expense of dealing with this cyber event. And when that is paired with that lost revenue and a lot of times subpar insurance coverage, that'll can cause the business to ultimately file for bankruptcy and go under. So a little bit more about where can files live, and they can live in many places at once. So some locations to think about are our laptops and desktops, our phone. Our phone has a lot of files on it, especially if we're using it to like check work email. Maybe we were using Slack or OneDrive or something like that. So our phone could be a place that files live. Removable media, so USB thumb drives, very popular place for them to live. Backup tapes. So for those of you that are still using them, good on you, keep using them. And for those of you that are like, what's a backup tape? It's actually an older type of technology that we used to use to store information. And it's just like a cassette tape. So for those of you born in the 1980s, just like a regular audio cassette tape that stored the data. And we started getting rid of them. And then we realized, hey, they're actually really great at protecting us from allowing us to be able to recover from ransomware. So they're actually coming back in vogue. So if you don't have one, you might want to think about getting one. So let's talk about the life cycle of a file. So every file has a life cycle. And at all of the stages of the life cycle, we need to make sure that we're keeping that file safe and secure. So the very first step of a file's life cycle is its creation or receipt. So, you open up that Word doc, you start writing that document, that Excel file. When you create that, that's that file's creation. Now, if you receive a file from someone else, the life cycle of that file for you begins when you receive that file. And that might have come in as an email attachment. That might have been a link from a website. Maybe it was a Dropbox or a OneDrive, something like that, but you get it. And then there's the period of maintenance and use. So this is, using the file to conduct your business, to run your business. And then, that can go on for, quite a very long time. But at some point, there comes a need to either archive that file. A lot of times archiving is done for legal reasons, sometimes for historical purposes, or we need to destroy that file. And it's amazing to me how many small businesses don't do file destruction. Can actually go to eBay right now. And for very little money, you can buy old used computers from small businesses that those hard drives are full of company data. It's actually a technique that cyber criminals use quite frequently because it's far easier to buy a hard drive from eBay that was not properly cleaned or disposed of than it is to try to hack through your firewall. Thankfully, criminals are somewhat lazy. So, I'm talking about these files and all the places they live. So what is file security? So there's three main tenets to security. And the first is confidentiality, right? We want to protect the private information and keep it private. And that can be done in a variety of ways, but that's what we're trying to do. The other thing we're trying to do with file security is ensure the integrity of that data. And this is especially important if that data is used to make decisions. So for example, healthcare data, if that data was to become, corrupted, and all of a sudden you don't show that medication allergy, or you show a medical condition you don't have, or something like that, that can be very bad. Same thing with banking. If the integrity of the bank ledger or the accounting files become corrupted, that could be a problem. And the other thing that we find is the integrity around like intellectual property and design files and business processes and some of that internal stuff that, again, if it was corrupted, manipulated, or modified, could result in a disruption of business. Lastly, we need files to be available. We have to be able to use them and get to them when we need to. So when we talk about file security, we're really talking about confidentiality, integrity, and availability. So I'll unpack that a little bit here. So File security is achieved by practicing confidentiality, integrity, and availability. So how do we do that? So some methods to do that are encryption. So encrypting the file allows us to make that file unreadable to anyone that does not have the password to open that file. And for those of you that might be listening that aren't necessarily technical, encryption simply means scrambling up the information so that it just doesn't make any sense to anyone anymore. That is the most common method. It is very easy to implement. All of you listening today, if you have a computer that was built in the last 5 years, have an option to encrypt already built into your operating system. In Microsoft's world, it's BitLocker. In Apple's world, I think it's just on by default, but you'd have to double check. I'm not a big Apple user. The other way that we achieve file security is by limiting access. And this is a concept from the world of security that we call least privilege. The idea here is that I only give you the access that you need to be able to do your job. I don't give you any more access than you need, and I don't give you any less access, but really limiting that access. So for example, if I have HR personnel files, I probably want to limit the access of those files only to the manager of that employee or the HR department, those authorized to have those files. I probably don't want everyone in the company having access. Same thing when we think about our accounting details. I don't want the accounts payable database wide open to the whole company. I want that restricted to just those who need it. Another way, and this is very important, is we want to track. We actually need to log and track, who's opened this file and when. And again, if you're using modern cloud products, all of this stuff is in there. You just kind of got to dig around in your settings. So for example, I'll use O365. If you're an Office 365 customer, you can actually go into your settings and then you can look at activity. It will show you who's accessing what, when, and from where. So why that's important is if you notice that, hey, at 2 a.m, somebody in North Korea is trying to access my files and I'm not doing business with anyone in North Korea, excuse me, then that could be an indicator that something's gone wrong. Another way is, again, we want to destroy and delete and get rid of anything old and expired. It's fascinating to me how many times I go in and discover that a company has data on customers they haven't done business with in 10 years, 20 years. Well, if they have a data breach, they still have to deal with that. That's now one more credit report monitoring they have to pay for. That's one more person potentially they're liable for damages to. So really making sure you're limiting how much data you're keeping. And then lastly, it's limiting the sharing. Be very specific. A lot of us have made the mistake, myself included in the early days, of using the share link in like my Google Drive. Well, what I didn't understand at the time is that link was wide open to anyone on the internet. And that if they just ran a script, they could find that link and access my files. So I had to get very specific and only share it with certain people. So I didn't use the generic share link. I would actually, set up a specific email address or user. So make sure we're limiting how much we're sharing. That's a very important part. Now, file permissions, and this is how files, how the access to files are controlled. So generically speaking, the file permissions are read, write, execute, and delete. Read is exactly what it sounds like. It allows you to read the file. A lot of us have seen a file that's read only. That would be the read permission. Write is, again, the ability to add to that or modify that file. Execute tends to mean that I have the ability to do things like fire off exe or install a new piece of software or cause a program to run. And then lastly is delete. And that is exactly like what it sounds like. It's the permission to delete or destroy or remove a file. Now, getting a little bit more specific, in the world of Windows, file permissions are full control, modify, read and execute, list folder contents, read and write. Based on those generic ones we just talked about, but these are the ones that Windows has, and they've chosen to name them this way. In the world of Linux, it's read, write, execute, and no permission. So again, very common between the operating systems, but there are some slight differences. So you'll need to figure out, what kind of operating system you're running, whether it's Windows, whether it's Mac. But the idea is that you want to restrict the file to only have the permission level that you need for that user for that file. So for example, if I want everyone to read the company policy, but not edit the company policy, I'm probably going to make that file a read-only file. So tools will come in very handy for dealing with all of this. There's a lot for you to manage. There's a lot of places to manage it. So using tools is going to make it easier to keep these files secure. There are files for encrypting that you can, there are encryption tools. There are what we call data loss prevention tools. These are tools that you run inside your network that you set rules on to say, hey, if HR tries emailing all of the W-2 files to some random email address we've never seen before, stop that from happening. Or, we don't email files in the middle of the night. So if anyone tries to email a file at, 2:30 in the morning, stop that from happening. So those tools are called data loss prevention tools. Then you also have a complementary tool to that called a file integrity monitoring tool. And what this tool does is it looks to see if any changes have been made to that file. Has that file, been modified when it shouldn't have been? And this tool will detect that and alert you if that's happened. We also have access control tools. So these are tools that allow us to control who is accessing what file, what level of permission do they have, what can they do with it. And then there's mobile device management. Most of us today are using some type of cell phone, laptop, Chromebook, mobile device. Now, when we use mobile devices in a business setting, we need to be able to recover that device, wipe that device, and manage that device. Phones get lost, phones get stolen. And if that phone has company data on it, sensitive information, could have, customer info, financial info, could have intellectual property, anything like that. We need the ability to remote wipe that device, at least to get the company data off of it. So best practice is not to allow the mixing of personal and company phones. That's best practice. Reality, that doesn't happen too often. So instead, we use something like a mobile device management tool. Microsoft has some available. There are lots in the market, but we use that tool to help us manage that mobile device. And this isn't about spying on employees or anything like that. So if you do choose to implement this, have a conversation with your staff. Hey, we're not looking at your photos. We're not reading your text messages. This is just so we can wipe out the company email if we need to, should you lose your phone or it becomes stolen. Or in rare cases, if you have a involuntary separation with that employee and you want to make sure they can't cause any trouble. So all of this is leading us into this CMMC. These are specific things within the CMMC we have to do. The CMMC is much broader than just file monitoring, much broader than just file management, but that's a great place to start. So as we talk about where to start, as we get into the CMMC, the very first thing you're going to have to figure out is what's at risk. What is your risk exposure? How exposed are you to the internet? How well have you done security? What are those gaps? What are those areas for improvement? So getting a risk assessment done is very important. The next thing you're going to want to do, and this is specific to data, is you're going to need to inventory those files. What files do I have? Where are they? What's in them? That helps us then to move into our classification phase. Not every file you have needs to be protected like it's a trade secret, but you do need to protect your trade secrets like they're trade secrets. We actually just saw a court case play out where the company was hacked, their trade secrets were stolen, and the judge ruled because they did not protect them like trade secrets, they could not argue that they were trade secrets. And we know that security, does cost money. It's not completely free. So as we go through classification, it's important to think about, is this a trade secret? Is this private? Is this confidential? Is this public? If it's public, how much protection do I really need? But if it's trade secret or if it's private, personal information, I want to protect that pretty good. So once I understand the classification, now I can begin to protect my files because I know what I'm trying to protect, I know where it is, and I know how sensitive and important it is to my business. As I begin to do this, though, I'm going to need to train my staff because my staff is going to experience a change. I may need them to change their process. I may need them to change their behavior. I may just need to educate them on the fact we're using a new system or tool. So it's important to understand that you need to train your staff as well, and then monitor. So in the world of security, whether it's file protection, whether it's DDoS, ransomware, whatever security thing you might be doing, it is the monitoring of those users, computers, and systems that allow you to react quicker, to potentially prevent a larger issue from happening. And the better you monitor, generally, the less you will spend over time on security because you're not going to get caught off guard. You're gonna see things early when they're still very manageable. It's the analogy I'll use here is like the doctor, right? If you start getting a small growth on your neck and it's the size of a pea, and you go to the doctor and say, "Hey, what is this?" A lot of times they'll say, "Oh, glad we caught it early. We can do something. It's not very invasive. Maybe we've got medicine or a shot." But if we let the thing grow to the size of a pumpkin, and then we go in, they say, "Ooh, this is going to be expensive. This is going to hurt. There's more risk." Cyber is no different. If you catch it early, it generally can be treated quickly at a lower price point. If you get caught with ransomware and you've done nothing to prepare for it, well, that tends to be the most expensive. So with that, let's dive into the CMMC. And if anyone has any questions, go ahead and throw them up there in the chat. So CMMC, what the heck is this? CMMC stands for Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification. And essentially it is based on another framework called the CMMI, which was the Capability Maturity Matrix Index. And really what it is it says, on a level of 1 to 5, how mature am I? So for example, at a level 1, everything I do is very reactive. It's ad hoc, it's chaotic. I'm not really planning anything. I do the best I can with what I've got at the moment and I move on to the next thing. And level 5, for example, is very mature. And we'll go through a little bit of that. But basically level 5 says everything I do is planned. Everything, I don't get caught with surprises because everything's documented, planned, managed, standardized. So the DoD decided to adopt this CMMC model for the purposes of getting cohesion and consistency across the defense industrial base. So there's all these manufacturers, maybe even some of you on the call today are working on, with, or as part of the supply chain to the US government or the Department of Defense. And when you look at that, you realize there are thousands upon thousands of companies across this country who provide some type of material support, either directly or indirectly, either as part of a supply chain or as part of a direct contract fulfillment to the Department of Defense and the US government. And trying to manage thousands of different approaches to security, thousands of different ways that it's getting done, very difficult for them to do. So they said, let's create this standard and make everybody follow it. So what is this standard? Well, the CMMC has 17 domains, and there are practices within each domain. And then within that practice, there is a level of compliance that you have to achieve depending on what you're doing for the government. So, if you're at the very end of the supply chain and all you do is maybe provide nuts and bolts, you probably don't have to do much past the level 1. If you're providing the safety mechanism for the nuclear submarine reactor, you probably have to be a level 5. So let's take a look at what that is. So level 1 is your basic cyber hygiene. These are the most foundational things that anyone and everyone should be doing. This is basic password management. This is basic file management, knowing who's on your network, knowing what computers you have, making sure things are patched and updated. That's your basic cyber hygiene. So there's 17 practices within level 1 CMMC certification. And as you can see here, it's performed. So there's no process. It's just, yep, we do that. Now, when we get to level 2, we're talking about intermediate cyber hygiene. You can see it jumps up very quickly from 17 to 55 practices. And 2 of those are documented. So we have at least 2 formal processes. We're now getting to a point where we're documenting what we're doing. We may still be doing some ad hoc stuff. We may still be, kind of chaotic, but we're marching towards getting that documentation in place. Level 3, we consider to be good cyber hygiene. In addition to those 55, you now add 58 more practices and 1 more process. And this is really getting us to managed. And what managed is saying is, I work off those documents. I follow an established process so that I ensure I get consistent results. So for example, at level 3, if I'm to update the firewall, at level 3, I need to first document that I'm going to do that and then submit that change for approval. And then that change has to be approved, and then I can make that change. That same process is a level 1, I just make the change. That same process is a level 5, I go back and I look at how well things went and was there an opportunity for me to improve, do it better, do it different, do it more securely. So as we move to level 4, that's that proactive cyber hygiene. So that's 26 additional practices, 1 additional process. And now I'm actually, starting to think about things. I'm looking at things. I might not be optimizing yet, but I'm reviewing. I'm saying, hey, we've got these documents, we've got these processes, we're managing things, but are we getting the outcomes that we're hoping for? So that's what we're happening at level 4. And we're thinking more about, are there other things, other risks, other areas we need to address? Level 5 adds 15 more practices. Now, I will be very honest with you. I have yet in my entire career to meet an organization who's at level 5. Level 5 is this dream state. It is nirvana. It is, I am doing all of the right stuff every single day so well and so systematic that I have the luxury of looking for opportunities to optimize and improve on all this great stuff that I'm doing. God's honest truth. No matter who you are, you should be a level 1, even if you don't do business with the DoD. Level 1 is a great place. It's going to keep you safe. It's going to keep your customers safe. It's a great place to be. The majority of small businesses are going to fall between a 1 and a 3. At level 4, when the DoD requires you to be a level 4, generally we're talking about a tier 1 supplier, you're manufacturing military equipment, weaponry, guidance systems, and as a citizen of this country, I want the companies who are building those things to be as secure as they can be, right? I don't want that information falling into the hands of the bad guys who could maybe use it to harm us. So that's the CMMC certification levels in a nutshell. Hopefully some of that made sense. So now we're going to take a look at how we do that. Now, Security Studio provides a risk assessment platform. It's what we do. And one of the things we look at is the CMMC. So what you're seeing on the screen now is our view of a level 1 CMMC. So as you can see here, access control is a required domain, and they scored a 644. Our scoring system goes from 300 to 850, just like a credit score. Makes it pretty easy to read. All these ones in black, though, don't apply at level 1. So these are not applicable at level 1, but at access control, incident response. So that's having a plan for what happens if I get a cyber attack. How am I going to recover, respond, communicate? You can see here, system communications and protections required, media protection, physical protection, identity, and authentication. And those are just kind of your basic level 1s. In the Security Studio platform, green means compliant. Any other color means you're still working on it. Here's a little bit of a deeper dive, looking now at level 1 and level 2. So as you can see at level 2, now audit and accountability start to come into play, and awareness and training start to come into play. Each one of these is designed to kind of walk you up in levels of maturity. And all of it is based off of the NIST frameworks. And maybe you've heard of these before, and maybe you haven't, but 2 of the most common frameworks out there that are used as part of the CMMC, they're also used in a variety of other areas, are the NIST 800-171. And this is going to be CMMC levels 1, 2, and 3. Has a total of 110 security controls across 14 control families. Us IT folk and security people love to come up with new terminology, so I apologize in advance. There's also the NIST special publication, that's what the SP stands for, 800-172. And this accounts for CMMC levels 4 and 5. And in that are 35 controls and 3 control families. I don't expect anyone to be an expert in this, but it does help to know what are the actual things behind this. And for those of you that might not know, NIST is the National Institute of Standards and Technology. So they provide guidance on all types of technology related things, like how your keyboard should be work, and just different technological stuff. For example, NIST in a non-computer setting is helping to conduct the investigation in Florida to figure out what happened that caused that building to collapse. So great organization. These are really good frameworks, and they use them for the CMMC. So again, the S2 score, we help people get ready for the CMMC audit. That's what our tool. We have a variety of different frameworks that we support: HIPAA, high tech, NIST, CMMC, FFIEC if you're in banking, et cetera, et cetera. But the idea is, you should do an audit prep. So if anybody today, whether you do it with us or anybody else, if you're thinking about getting CMMC or you're required to get it, I encourage you to work with someone to do your audit prep first before you bring in your auditor. If you bring in an auditor and you haven't prepared, the auditor's job is to find things wrong, say, yep, that's wrong. Then they stop the audit and they leave. And now you pay that bill and they say, okay, go fix that. And then you fix it. And then you pay them to come back a second time. And if they find something else, they say, oh, no, we found that. You need to fix that, and so on and so on. So you actually save a lot of money in the long run by working with a firm or even doing it yourself. But go through that audit prep. Make sure you're ready for your audit. The S2 platform will give you a roadmap for improvement, and it's super simple. If anybody wants any more information on this, feel free to reach out to Jolene or myself. Happy to get you guys some info on it, but I'm also not here to sell you too hard. I'm here to help you. So probably the most important slide we're going to look at is this one. And it's talking about who is responsible. A lot of times we think it's somebody else's problem. It's Microsoft's problem. It's the IT guy's problem. It's my ISP's problem. Your cybersecurity practices and habits, your cybersecurity risk is 100% your problem. You are responsible for you. No one else is responsible for my cell phone being secure except for me. Not the cell phone maker, not the cell service provider, not anyone else in my household, me. Same is true in your businesses. You're responsible for the security of your business. Whether you have 1 employee or 1 million, you're still ultimately responsible. No one's responsible except for you. Risk is what we're talking about, and risk is very personal. So, for example, I'm not comfortable with certain security risks. I'm just not, partly because I'm a security guy, partly because being a security guy makes you paranoid, but I'm just not comfortable with certain risks. I have friends of mine who are very comfortable with those risks. That's okay. That's their choice. Myself, I don't have a smart home. I don't have smart speakers. I don't have any of that stuff. I'm not comfortable with that risk. I have friends who their entire home is controlled by their cell phone, and they're okay with that. And I've explained to them that I can, open their garage door, from a mile away or whatever, it might be. And they're like, yeah, but I know you, and how many people are like you? So they're not wrong, but, think about that. And this is true for your business as well. The risk that you're comfortable with for your business is very personal to you. Being responsible and knowing about cybercrime, knowing about how to protect yourself from it, taking just even the tiniest step today, maybe today's the day you can add multi-factor authentication to your accounts, will help you to protect yourself from crime. And that's going to become more and more important. And you see this in the news every day, data breach after data breach after data breach. And it's because we as people, as individuals, aren't taking as much responsibility for it as we should. We're kind of expecting somebody else to handle it. We're expecting Amazon or Apple or the IT guy or my internet provider, but it is us. So as Smokey says, only you can prevent cybercrime. So I've talked a lot about knowing what to do, and I don't know what you know how to do or not do. So one of the things that Security Studio does to help everyone get better at this is we provide a free, completely free, not going to market to you, not going to sell you things. Make up an email, go to 10-minute email, give us a fake email. I don't care. We're not going to use your data. This is for you. But what we do is we allow you to take a quick personal risk assessment and see what your S2 score is. How are you scoring on a scale of 300 to 850? I'm pretty sure you know your credit score. You should also know your security score. And we give you recommendations on what to change or improve if you're interested in that. We also provide free monitoring to you where we will watch the dark net and we will watch for data breaches. And if we see your email show up, we'll let you know. What I tell anyone with children, if you have young children, use this to monitor your kids' emails. The bad guys and the cyber criminals love to hack children. They've been doing it for several years and we're now seeing the results. But if you don't take the necessary steps to protect your child's digital identity, you can find yourself in a situation where it's now time to go to college, get that first apartment, get that first car, and you find out that your kid has $800,000 in outstanding debt for a house they bought in Florida when they were 4. You can actually Google this. I'm not making it up. This stuff happens all the time. So take your S2Me, get your S2 score, and start coming up with a plan. So as promised, I wanted to leave plenty of time for questions. So let's do that. Let's do some Q&A here. Phone for work emails, what's that? Yes, okay, so love this. Lucy asks, she says, I use my phone for work emails. And what is the best practice? I'm not using a separate phone for work. Does regular restarting of the phone do anything positive? Absolutely. You should restart myself. I restart my phone at least once a week. I also, check for updates, right? That's most important. Check for updates, see if I've got an update to apply. And this is for the apps I have installed as well as the phone's operating system. And then I do reboot. Rebooting can actually kick a bad guy out. We've stopped cyber attacks by simply rebooting. So that can be very helpful and I do recommend it. It also helps your phone just to run a little bit better and perform. What I do recommend though is if you are using the phone for work email, don't download attachments to your phone. And the reason for this is first part is security. Second part is if there's ever a legal investigation, your personal phone could be called in as evidence in that investigation. And everything on your phone then becomes fair game and could become a matter of public record. So just food for thought. How often? CMMC has to be done annually. So you will, as the government finalizes how it's going to work and finally kind of ratifies it, the expectation will be an annual assessment. So once a year, you'll have to have somebody come and check that you're doing all of the right things. They'll sign you off for the year, and then they'll come back again next year. And I'm not sure what the recertification requirements are for the auditors yet, but I suspect it'll probably be something like 3 years. Other questions that we have? And you guys can ask me anything. It doesn't necessarily even have to be on what we covered on the slides. Right? Think of it like a Reddit AMA. Lucy asked what size companies I work with. I work with companies of all sizes, very small to very, very large, state governments, large multinationals, all the way down to, local small business with less than 2 employees. Because believe it or not, cybersecurity is for everybody. It's a life skill more than it is anything else these days. And frankly, it's very important to business now. Everyone wants to know that you're doing everything that you can do to protect their information. And we are seeing a growing trend of cybersecurity affecting insurance and insurability. We're also seeing a growing trend of cybersecurity practices being a business differentiator. So if I'm looking at a product and competitor A and competitor B seemingly offer me the same product or similar feature, then the very next question becomes, who's doing security better? Who's in this fight with me? Who's going to tell me that something's gone wrong before I read about it in the paper? Yes. So Lucy has asked, am I familiar with cyber insurance through business insurers? Absolutely. I work very closely with the insurance industry. And the craziest thing that I've seen happen in the last 6 months that will be impacting businesses of all sizes is that Lloyd's of London and Berkshire Hathaway, who happen to be two of the largest underwriters of underwriters, basically said, we will no longer write these crazy high dollar limit coverage plans for cybersecurity because people aren't doing enough of the basics, that it's now too risky of a business proposition. And so maybe you yourself have gotten your renewal where, last year it was maybe 1 page with 5 questions, and this year it's 13 pages with 80 questions. We fully expect that trend to continue. We also expect the cost of cyber insurance to go up because they've paid a lot the last couple of years. I forget what the final number was. I think it was like 14 trillion overall globally. So, insurance companies are not in business to lose money. They're in business to make money. So they're going to change how they do what they do. And then that's going to trickle down to us. So for any of you that take credit card payment, PCI is something you've had to deal with. Now, you probably dealt with it by hiring an outside company who provides that service, and you're just able to swipe cards and everything's good. But somebody has to be doing that work. Same will become true with cyber. Antivirus and do I have any recommendations for antivirus, anti-malware security software? I do. It's going to come down to a couple of factors. Really, at the end of the day, almost all of it does the same exact thing. And we're at a point now where it's so commoditized that I wouldn't necessarily recommend one brand over the other. What I would look at is, what am I trying to secure? Is this my personal machine? Is this my phone? Is this a set of business computers? Is this my server at the office? What am I trying to secure? There are some products that work a little bit better with like larger environments than smaller. But I'll tell you what, 2 that come top of mind, PCmatic. PCmatic makes a great product. I really like them. And what I like best about PCmatic is they give it away for free to K-12 schools. So there's a special place in my heart for that. And the other one I would turn you on to is Nodeware, Nodeware. And what Nodeware does is it actually scans your computers for vulnerabilities. So think of it as like antivirus on steroids, and it's incredibly affordable. So those would be the 2 top ahead that I recommend. But just have something is really the takeaway there. Doesn't matter the manufacturer. If you are notified your email is on the dark web, the very first thing you want to do is reset the password for that email. Okay, step 101. And if you're like most humans, that password probably has been used a couple other places. Go reset it there as well. Best practice, don't reuse your passwords, right? Have one password for one thing and a different password for something else. Password managers can be very helpful. I couldn't even begin to tell you what my passwords are because I use a password manager. So I have these crazy passwords that are like, 27, 32 characters long, made up of, the cat fell asleep on the keyboard, just terrible long password. I only need to remember one password though, and that's to get into my password manager. Everything else I can just kind of click and it's very easy. The other recommendation I'll give you is have one email address that you use only for financial and health purposes. So your MyChart login, your bank login, your credit card, your 401k, all that stuff, send that to a single email. And don't name it something like this is my banking information at gmail.com, right? Make it a little bit harder to figure out, but use one email for all of those accounts and then one or many email, your choice, for everything else. That is something that you can do today that will reduce your risk by 60% right now, because the bank and the hospital are working very hard to protect your information. However, Joe's knitting supplies.com, maybe not so much. So we want to be very selective and fiercely protect those finance accounts, especially in business. Other questions?
Well, if there aren't any other questions, I'll go ahead and close up today. And I do have a few reminders for those who are attending. First, I want to go ahead and thank Ryan for being here with us today and sharing your insights. As always, your expertise is always appreciated. Oh, we do have one more question.
So the question is phone in the dark web. So if you're referring to your phone number, not a lot we can do there, right? Basically, what it is that when companies lose data, they tend to lose whatever you've provided them. So that could be name, birth date, home address. I'm actually going to put a website in the chat here, and it's called Have I Been Pwned? And what this website will do is allow you to look to see if your email has been compromised. And if so, where was it compromised? So that you can then go and make the necessary corrections and update those passwords. Let's see here. Make sure I get the web address right. I'll put that in the chat for you. Very important to do. One other thing I'll tell you to do is check your bank statements on a very regular basis. And don't just look for large transactions. One of the things the bad guys are doing now is they're taking, 50 cents to $1 from 100 million people. Well, now I have $100 million, right? So, and most of us, if we're being honest, I don't know that I could tell you within 50 cents or $1 how much money is in my account. So looking for those small transactions can be helpful in catching fraud before it gets out of hand. Well, thank you, everyone. I hopefully you learned something today, and absolutely happy to help. So if anything comes up, any questions or anything, don't hesitate to reach out to Jolene, and she'll get that to me, and we'll get you some answers.
Thank you, Ryan. Just a few housekeeping notes. I will be making available the recording of this training on the Wilkes SBDC YouTube channel for everyone, and I will be emailing that link to attendees as well. I'll also be emailing out a post-event survey so that we can determine which of our resources will best suit your needs and what topics you would like to see as training sessions in the future. And with that, I just want to thank everyone for attending this training. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to contact us at the SBDC. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day, and I look forward to seeing you at future webinars. Thanks so much, everyone. Bye.